Thank you very much for joining us all this morning. So my name is Georgie and I'm the Operations Officer for the DofE, so that's the Duke of Edinburgh Award. Today I hopefully will inspire you to take on young DofE volunteers within your organisation. I think that shouldn't be a difficult task because for many of you you're already working with young volunteers, which is fantastic. I can't see the chat box at the moment, so if there are any questions, like Amelia said, just pop them in the chat and hopefully we'll answer them all at the end. Or if you have any issues, then please just pop your microphone off and let me know. So firstly, for those of you who are new to the DofE or maybe have some preconceptions about what the award is and what it can offer, I just wanted to provide you with a brief overview. So the DofE programme, you know, the main focus of that is to provide something young, fun for young people, an opportunity for them to make friends, build their self-esteem and confidence, but also they're gaining those essential life skills and, you know, the things that they may need for work and life, such as resilience, problem solving, teamwork, communication. And as we know, you know, you've probably heard it before, DofE is still very well recognised with employers and universities. It's been running for over 60 years and there's a reason for that. You know, it is a very popular award, but also it is something that can help a young person in their future life. It can develop them for anything that they might want to do. Another thing you may not be aware of is that we operate in a licensing system. So we have licensed organisations who run our DofE programme, and that can be anything from schools, colleges, youth clubs, and other organisations. We are a registered charity. We are funded by donations. We have a cost attached to the licence fee and the participation places for the young people, but very often we are funding those as well. And we work with organisations across the UK and also internationally, but that is another branch, the International Award. And we are focusing on increasing opportunities for young people and giving them a chance to develop themselves. So I'm not sure if anyone knows how many people are working towards the DofE right now. I can tell you that at the moment in our last, because we still work April to April, our financial year, we had over 300,000 young people in the UK start their DofE journey. But for this session, I think it's important to note that from that, there were over 2 million hours given for volunteering through our young people. Okay, so that's a lot of volunteering hours that they are providing within their communities, within their support networks. And, you know, what we want to make sure is that every young person has the opportunity to do their volunteering, which is what I will talk about a little bit in this presentation. So again, just reflecting on our strategic ambitions, you know, DofE may be seen by a lot of people as something that only specific groups of young people take part, and that really isn't the case. You know, our 5-year Youth Without Limits strategy is to make DofE more accessible and more relevant to all groups of young people. That includes marginalised young people as well. So we want to have over 1 million young people taking part over the next 5 years, and we want a significant proportion of that to be those who face marginalisation, who wouldn't be necessarily the DofE kids that you might think in an organisation or a school. And that's why it's really important that I spend time in the local community with groups that will engage young people who might not be engaging in school at this time. So I think it's really important, and I'm very thankful that I have the opportunity to come along to sessions like this and to talk about, you know, what the DofE wants to achieve. So again, if you're not fully familiar with this, the DofE Award operates in 3 levels. So we've got the bronze, which can start from the academic year they turn 14 if they're in a school. If they're in an external organisation such as Scouts or a youth group, it's when they turn 14, and that progresses right up until the gold. And as you can see, for the gold award, they will be volunteering for 12 months at least. If they go in at direct level of gold, that extends to 18 months. You know, so the young people here, they really are dedicating their time to volunteering. This isn't something that they'll just do for a weekend. You know, the idea is that they commit and they can see something through for an extended period of time. We've got the 4 sections of bronze and silver. So there's not only the volunteering section that they need to complete, for the minimum of 3 months. There's the physical, the skill, and then they go on expedition, which might be the traditional DofE you think of as kids with big backpacks. They still do that, but there are obviously lots of options and flexibilities now for whether they do that in the more traditional way, or whether they take on something like a restricted spaces expedition or an urban expedition as well. Lots of different options. Sorry, just lost my thread what I was going to say. And I'm going to play a video for you just to talk about the different ways and different young people that we have engaged. I'm hoping this sound is going to work.
When I was 18, I was in prison. I came across the Duke of...
Can everyone hear that?
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Edinburgh Awards, and I jumped at the opportunity. I didn't realise at the time how big an impact it would have on my life. I had to pick a skill, so I completed an MVQ in cookery. I am now a successful chef. Taking part in the DofE helped to mould me into the person I am today. So I am backing the efforts to get 1 million more people taking part in the Duke of Edinburgh Award. Taking part in the DofE not only changed my life, but it saved it.
So John here is an example of just one young person whose life was changed through the DofE programme. We run DofE in prisons, youth offending institutes and secure estates, and from that they are able to take on new skills or develop themselves. You know, and this can lead to a future career. I mean, myself, I volunteered at the National Trust when I did my DofE at gold level. I helped them to run their children's activities, led me to working in education, and now I combine my passions of both through a career at the DofE itself. You know, so there really is that opportunity to progress into something that they feel passionate about through particularly that volunteering or skill section, I would say.
When I was 18.
So looking specifically at that volunteering section then, this is the aim. So when young people take it on, this is what they're focused with. The idea is that they are inspired to make a difference within their community or to an individual's life. They're developing their compassion by giving service to others. So I don't have to sell that to you all because you all work with young volunteers or volunteers within charitable organisations anyway. But for a lot of young people, this might not be something that they have particularly seen or had access to. They may not come from a background or a family where people volunteer or have the capacity to volunteer. So what this could be for them is that first introduction into the benefits of volunteering. And if they give their time up for something, they will feel the reward for that. So as I mentioned before, we work with a really diverse range of partners, schools, prisons, youth organisations, but still many of our young people are actually struggling to find meaningful volunteering opportunities. So just to give you some stats, within central England, which is the region that we sit in right now, only 38% of our participants last year were able to complete their volunteering section. This could be for a number of reasons. You know, a lot of them don't know where to look. They may lack that support at home, or parents might not be able to give them that support to drive them potentially off to that one charity shop that they think where the only place they might be able to volunteer. They're also quite dependent on the school sorting out opportunities for them, and the school may not have the capacity to. I think schools are very good at the expedition section because they can treat it like a trip, but when it comes to providing volunteering opportunities or access to those, they still need a little bit of support and development with that. In Norfolk, just for context, we have pretty much every mainstream secondary school, so there are only 4 in Norfolk that currently don't deliver DofE. So there's a lot of young people who have the opportunity to take part, but still there's a significantly low number of those who are taking part who have managed to complete their volunteering section at the end. So there's a really huge number of young people who are looking for volunteering opportunities right now. And for those 4 schools who currently don't deliver, the Department of Education have included DofE in their sort of youth engagement projects, and they are funding those schools to actually license over the next 3 years. So even those 4 schools, we will see them licensed fairly soon. So there's lots of young people there, need those opportunities. So why use young volunteers? I think there are lots and lots of reasons why we can use them. We have some fantastic spokespeople later on in this session for them, but I would say, you know, enthusiasm. They're really enthusiastic, very passionate about the things that they are interested in, or the things they could potentially be interested in. I think it gives organisations a really good perspective, a different perspective on what they do to have young people involved. They're very tech savvy most of the time, as you can see, not me so much with my Zoom today. And also it's an opportunity for you to give them learning and development opportunities that they might not have, particularly what we've seen obviously in the current climate with the pandemic. They won't have had access to a lot of those opportunities, you know, previous to that. And now potentially things could be even more dire for them. How are they different to adults? You know, I would throw that question back to you to have a little think about it now. Support in the beginning. There are obviously supervision requirements for them and safeguarding checks that you'll need to do. So there is that different angle on working with a young volunteer. But I do believe, you know, that those things, the benefits will outweigh those in the long run. I'm going to talk a little bit about those for you just to sort of put that in context as well. So I feel like there may be some barriers, or people feel that there are some perceived barriers around working with young volunteers. So, you know, the D of E states, this is from our sort of handbook, you know, your volunteering must not be done for a business, but can be undertaken for a charity or not-for-profit organisation. So if your volunteering is in support of the surplus generating work, so if you're in a charity shop, for example, then some local authorities may ask for a work permit. But again, that's something that we would ask the charity themselves to be aware with and support the young person as required. So that's something that you obviously need to know. Volunteering can take place in something that works as a business. So for example, a library, as long as it's not replacing a paid member of staff. So they wouldn't necessarily be able to volunteer as a librarian or doing a job like cataloguing books, because that's someone's paid role, but they could help with the summer reading challenge, or they could go in and read to children or to the elderly, or help with research on their computers, something like that. Time commitment is often seen as a barrier. You know, the fact that they'll only be with you for a short number of times. You may be aware that at the moment, so the states that they do around an hour a week for at least 3 months, right up to 18 months, but they can condense those volunteering hours if appropriate. So that is something that you could think about, and they could talk to their D of E manager as well. Additional administration. So there is something that you need to check, that what can be changed within your policy to make sure that you can provide volunteering opportunities safe for your under 16s. It may already be in place. I have spoken to a few organisations before who didn't realise that they were actually able to do it already, or it was the case of a simple phone call to their insurance company and they were able to do it. You know, and also I think the main thing to think about is, even though it feels like at the beginning they'll only be with you a short time, if they have a positive learning experience or a volunteering experience with you, they could stay there throughout their D of E journey and even into adulthood. So if they begin at bronze, you could have them until they're gold. You know, that's a really decent number of years. I'll use Wyndham High School as a good example of a school that manages to kind of keep hold of their volunteers. So at the moment, they deliver the D of E programme pretty much completely with volunteers. They use maybe 1 or 2 members of staff. But what they do is they keep the students. So students who have spent their bronze, silver and gold with them, they then bring them back after their gold, and they provide them with support and training. And they're now the ones out helping them lead expeditions. The D of E manager himself was a D of E participant at the previous school. So, you know, it may feel like they're only with you for a short time, but I think if everyone has a positive experience, that's something that they'll continue to do, you know, even past their D of E. So what needs to be in place? So again, I'm not the expert. I won't give you the specific needs and wants because they may vary depending on your organisation. But working with volunteers is a very rewarding venture, and you know you must be able to demonstrate that you can keep them safe. So what I've had here, and I will share this for Amelia to circulate, is some links to the things that you may need with regards to insurance, safeguarding, supervision. The NSPCC website is fantastic for finding out all the information that you need, And Voluntary Norfolk, of course, has lots of great information, including their good practice guide, which is really, really detailed, and it really will go through everything that you might need if you're not currently working with young volunteers. Just check your employability liability insurance to make sure that it covers young volunteers. So these things are just checks, and again, that's something that Voluntary Norfolk, I'm sure, or myself could help you with as, you know, a bit of a support there. So with regards to DofE, what you would need to do, the only thing that you would be asked is to complete something called an assessor's report at the end. So you could do this online, or as you can see here, there's a paper copy. When all the students, the participants first sign up, they get a little logbook. And some of you who did your DofE yourself, you might remember these logbooks. They still have them, even though we have an online system now. And you just need to fill that in, just confirming that they've done the activity for the time amount allowed. So it's really not a strenuous journey. There's nothing else that you would need to do for that, apart from just sort of agree to be their assessor at the beginning of their journey, and then complete this assessor report at the end. So we are expanding our reach to more marginalised groups, which means there will be more young people struggling to find those accessible volunteering opportunities. You know, how can I support you? What I'm here to say today is that I am aware and able to support you with your journey for young volunteers. I look after DofE in Norfolk with the licensed organisation, but that also spreads to supporting local organisations and communities to build and develop their relationship with DofE managers or licensed organisations. So I feel and believe that I could help you to be empowered to do that, to reach out to those organisations that are currently delivering DofE. I can organise and facilitate meetings with DofE managers and be present at those as well with you. I can support you with in-person visits to the centres so you can talk directly to young people. I know Heidi will talk to you a little bit about that, but I really believe that for those young people who aren't able to travel outside of their school gates to go and volunteer at a separate organisation, there is a lot to be said to the organisations going into the schools and talking a little bit about what they do and what they can offer there. We run cluster meetings, so the DofE leaders and volunteers within our licensed organisations come along. You'd be more than welcome to come and talk or just listen at one of those meetings. We have flyers and templates that you would be able to tweak and adapt to fit what you would need out of a young volunteer in line with the DofE programme, so you can advertise that. I can help you to write those assessor reports. And also, if you would like to be, you could look into becoming an approved activity provider. So an approved activity provider is a quality standard on an organisation's activity. It demonstrates that it meets the programme and sectional requirements of the DofE. So essentially, we would have an agreement with you that shows that you would attend some training, understand the needs of the programme, and would be able to offer the section in its entirety. So for example, you would say, I can offer a young volunteer a 13-week programme here at my organisation. That still means that, you know, that you will need your own process for checking the suitability and working with young people, but what it does is give you that sort of quality assurance stamp from the DofE, and it also means that you'll appear on our website in the opportunity finder where young people might look to that. But you don't need to. You could just be someone who works closely with the DofE, but you might already be an AAP. For a lot of you who have maybe a national organisation body, it might already have an AAP licence. So people like Barnardo's or Scope or the British Heart Foundation already have an AAP licence. So I'd be able to check that for you as well. So there's lots of things that you can do when you're working with young volunteers. It is an amazing opportunity. I do feel like they provide you something special and different. And purely for me, a few administration tasks for a number of organisations once, which will then make you suitable, you know, going forward to offer that programme. So thank you very much for listening to me. That's everything I have to say, and then obviously I'll be here for the rest of the session. I'm going to unshare the screen now so I can see you.
Thanks, Georgie.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Oh, Jim, I know that Heidi has got to rush off to another event in UEA. So could we hold on to questions, put them in the chat, and then we'll do questions after Heidi's presentation, if that's okay?
Perfect, no problem.
All right, Heidi, I'm going to pass on straight to you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and it's lovely to be here. So I work for an environmental charity based in Peterborough, so just outside of Norfolk, called PECT, and we're all about creating sustainable neighbourhoods. So I'm the environmental education lead at PECT, so I work very closely with schools. I am an ex-secondary school teacher and DofE leader and manager, so I know exactly what goes into the DofE, and from the other side of the fence I know exactly how hard it is to find these opportunities. So when I came out of teaching and went into the environmental sector, I was really keen to ensure that we offered as many opportunities to young people as possible, and not just through the Duke of Edinburgh Awards system. So we have lots of projects that happen in our space, from planting trees to creating wildflower meadows for pollinators. But what we want to do is we want to empower young people to go out and be able to replicate their experiences with us in other spaces, in other locations, creating more volunteering opportunities for more young people. So for example's sakes, we will work in a school and we'll go into that school and plant trees with the students. Those trees then don't just get left and survive themselves. They do need looking after, they need regular checks and watering. So we'll teach the young people to do that, to be able to volunteer to be tree champions and look after those trees. So whether that's on their school site or outside of their school site in community areas. We also work with them to look at the world around them. So it could be that they identify that litter in their area is a problem. So we have a pack on our website which has all the risk assessments, all the information on how to set up and run a litter pick. So again, we'll work with young people, we'll work with them in an environment that's available and accessible to them. And then once we've done that with them, we empower them to then take further action and maybe involve their families and go out and do litter picks on a volunteering basis with other local community groups and join up with other Duke of Edinburgh students from other schools to create neighbourhood networks that are going out and having a real impact in their natural environment. So from something that's really small and might seem like a one-off volunteering opportunity, we can create a programme around that that's accessible for young people in whatever situation they're in and whatever location they're in. So it's not just about them going to one location and doing that one thing week on week. It's about empowering them to be able to move forward. That does link over to one of the other sections of the Duke of Edinburgh Award in terms of the skills section and learning those skills to be able to continue to do that. And then we work with them in forestry skills in terms of looking after trees and coppicing and identifying tree disease and things like that. So often we'll get young people who volunteer with us for their bronze, their very initial section of 3 months, but they stay with us because they want to learn that expertise. So they might come back and do their skills section with us, or they might stay with us and become a long-term volunteer. Lots and lots of places are currently offering outdoor volunteering experiences. So we manage an area called the John Clare Countryside. It's a massive area just outside Peterborough. And so we'll do hedge laying, we'll create wildlife homes for hedgehogs and badgers and things like that. So again, there's a diverse area. Just because they were looking at trees for a month, when we come out of tree planting season, we divest them and go into another area. So it's all about offering that all-round experience that gives them lots of different opportunities. And if you really strike that chord with them in something that they enjoy and can get involved with in multiple different ways, then you're going to keep them for a longer period of time than you would when they've just finished their 3 or 6 months or 12 months of their DofE volunteering. I don't know whether you want me to add anything else to that.
I think that sounds great, Heidi. Thank you, and really interesting to hear about the idea of organisations building networks. I think that could be really helpful for organisations in terms of sharing the load of coordinating volunteers. Definitely something to think about.
Something that schools do find useful is anything that they can take back into school. So those D of E leaders, if you like, then become volunteers operating after school activities themselves and becoming the experts within schools. So then that creates internal volunteering opportunities within schools for those that are more harder to reach or really cannot get out and about for whatever reason.
Heidi, have you got time to take any questions?
Yeah, I've got 5 minutes.
Has anybody got any questions for Heidi?
I would say, just from me, obviously, I've heard a couple of times Heidi talk about the fantastic work she does in school. How do you find the initial sort of networking when it comes to approaching a school or an organisation for the first time? You know, about offering what you do to their young people.
That's a really good question. So for the very first time, we'll go into the location. So we'll go into the school or the youth organisation, wherever that may be. We'll talk to them about our work, and then we'll do a recce of the space in which they currently are in. So whether that's school fields, school grounds, the park across the road from the youth club, or just the building that they're in, to kind of look and identify things that maybe they can improve. So whether that's planting programs, like I say, whether that's litter picking, whether that's finding an allotment that they never knew was next to them that they can kind of get involved with and bridge that generational learning gap. So we go in and we show them that actually opportunities exist all around them, and then it isn't just in a charity shop, or it isn't just in certain locations where people would normally expect to find volunteers and associate volunteers with them, that those opportunities exist wherever they are and wherever they want them to. You just got to find what the need is and then fulfill that need.
Thank you. Yeah, totally agree with that. And that's what I'm really trying to make them understand, you know, what volunteering is about. It isn't just going to that charity shop, which is absolutely fine if they want to go to a charity shop, of course, but there are so many other options and opportunities, and what they can really do is take ownership of that and make it something they're passionate about. And, you know, sustainability and nature, we know, is something that young people do really care about. So it's just, you know, they're out there, and what you all do, people who are on the call today, you know, really passionate things that they will want to get involved in. They just don't know how to do it. So that I really, you know, really hope if anyone takes anything from today, it's what Heidi said, it's that have the confidence to go in and chat to them about it and just open their horizons a little bit, because a lot of them won't know it exists right now. So thank you.
There was a question in the chat about young people being able to do their volunteering in one organisation. I'm also a volunteer myself. I volunteer with the Scout Association. We have volunteers come into us, young people who want to do their Duke of Edinburgh volunteering with us. I've got one, he's been with me for 18 months now, and we're hoping he's going to stay as a full-time leader within the Scout organisation. So yes, they can stay with one organisation and continue their volunteering through.
Thanks so much, Heidi. I'm just aware that you've got to go now, but thanks for coming along. Heidi,
Thank you, guys.
You're in Peterborough, aren't you? But you're actually at UEA today, coincidentally.
I am.
But thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
I'm sure that if you've got any other questions for Heidi, if you put them in the chat, either Georgie or me can pass them on. There was just another question in the chat, which was from Tracy at Cannes. Can a participant do all their volunteering from bronze to gold for the same organisational group, or would they have to take on slightly different roles through each?
So they definitely could. What we would ask them to do is just demonstrate the progression from that. So even though they might be doing the same volunteering role, there'll obviously be a development within that. So that's what they would need to talk about. You know, if they're volunteering at bronze, I think just naturally by the time they get to gold, what they're doing will have changed. So when they first put in, so EDV, which is our online system, once they first put the information in about what they are hoping to do, there's a little section there for them to be able to say what they hope to achieve from it. So that's definitely fine. There's sometimes a bit of a misconception that they have to do something completely new. they don't. So for example, physical activity is always a big one, where they might be a very active sports person anyway, doing lots of clubs and things, and they think they need to go and find a totally new sport. They don't. They just need to demonstrate what they're doing with their DofE from it. So if they're very good at playing tennis, you know, they could set themselves a particular goal for at the end of their DofE journey, what they hope to achieve and work on. So it's just making sure that there's a sort of a focus for them so they can demonstrate it for the award. Do you want me to just, I'm just looking at Sarah's now. If a volunteer condenses their hours, do all these have to be with the same organisation? So at the moment, so traditionally DofE, we would ask them to stay, you know, if possible, with one organisation throughout the process, so the 3 months to, you know, to the year. But we do appreciate that sometimes that isn't possible, and there may be things beyond their controls, which means they have to change activities. We introduced some changes due to the pandemic, which have just been extended to October 2023, just to support those particularly golds who may have started within 2020, that they can change activities more than once. So as long as they have an assessor's report for the different places that they've been, demonstrating the time that they've spent, that's fine. With the condensing their hours, I would say that it would be good practice for them to do it with the same organisation, but would be up for conversation with the DofE leader at their school or licensed group. So for example, if they're maybe looking at beach cleans and that only happens once a month, and that beach clean takes place with multiple organisations who do it on a rotating basis, something like that would be fine because the theme is the same. However, the organisation that they volunteer with might fluctuate. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's all up for conversation.
Amber, can we just hold your question until, because I'm just aware of time, we've got a bit more time for questions, so we'll pick that up, because I know that we've got on the agenda, we need to sort of, oh thanks, yeah, sure. We just need to move on. We've got a case study from Sarah from Break, who's going to talk a little bit about young volunteers, but in a sort of local perspective. So if I just pass on over to Sarah, hopefully you're ready.
Hi, good morning all. Thanks for having me along. Hopefully the phone won't ring like it just did. It's always the way, isn't it now? Good morning. So I've worked for Break for a number of years, and really through events as much as anything. We use a lot of young volunteers from all over for lots and lots of different reasons. And actually, yes, we do use Duke of Edinburgh volunteers, and we do welcome them into all of our charity shops. And actually we have, over the years, we've had hundreds of young people in with us in our charity shops, and they do really enjoy it. And I have to say, I do have a little case study, because I do have a case study who lives with me. My 14-year-old daughter actually is a Duke of Edinburgh Award. She's just started her bronze. She goes to our local Break charity shop. I didn't force her, by the way. She was completely free willed to do this. So she went to our local shop and is doing it now. She does it for an hour a week. And when the shop opens a little more, she'll do an hour and a half a week. And she tends to help as well during holidays as well. And she is absolutely loving it. She loves the opportunity to see lots of different people, to speak to different people, to do things that she's never done before. But she almost is my sort of little case study, and I probably am a little biased because she is my daughter, but I use her for lots of different fundraising events, and I use friends of hers, and we have, you know, used volunteers, young people volunteers, in lots and lots of different ways, and they really absolutely enjoy it. So just as a few examples, really, I run a charity clay shoot, which we hold every year, bar a couple of years for obvious reasons. And we have volunteers who come along, and we speak to schools, local private schools and other schools, and they bring along some of their year 10s, year 11s, if the time is appropriate, with a couple of senior staff as well. And what they do is they help on our lunch service. They can help with clearing, with sort of setting tables, those sorts of things. What we do make sure is that they only ever work for a couple of hours, have a really good break, and then they do another couple of hours. What I wouldn't do is ever have them along and have them in for a 4-hour stint that they were absolutely had to do. That's a really long time for a young person, I think. And if you're doing an hour and a half, 2 tops, then give them a break, good half an hour, make sure it's away from where you are, so that they do have a really sort of proper break, unlike the rest of us who have gotten really used to just working and working and working, particularly this working from home, where you sit here from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night and don't have a break, let alone go to the toilet. It's really, really important that I think you do look after your volunteers, and you do make sure, for example, we always do them a pack-up lunch. Although we suggest to them, bring some food, we always make sure there's lots of additional food. It's amazing how much food young volunteers go through. Biscuits always welcome, but certainly sort of little things that they can take away with them and they can have there and then, crisps, drinks, all that sort of stuff. I always feel that I'm very grateful for volunteers. I almost sort of over thank volunteers, forgetting that actually that it's a two-way street, forgetting that they're doing it because they want to help as much as you need them. And we do desperately need them, because otherwise I'd be, you know, sort of calling in all sorts of favors. So yeah, just making sure that they are really well looked after, that they do stop for lots of drinks, because they are all very shy. That is the one thing, particularly in groups, I find they're immensely shy. So they won't ask for a drink. They won't ask to go to the toilet. And so they're important things that I think for them to have a good experience. These are all little things that do make a difference. So we do other events as well. So you think, you know, they sort of come to us for, say, the clay shoot. Even on golf days, I've had young people who have come and helped me, and they sort of sit there and they want to learn things. They absolutely want to learn. We've had young people who have come into our office and been envelope stuffers for the day. And again, you know, just offering them biscuits and cake and all those sorts of things, you'll be amazed how much longer they stay. And then other things, for example, our go-go events. So when we've got the sculpture trails on in Norwich, we actually have some really wonderful volunteers who come along with a support sort of mentor person. And they have particularly sculptures that they look after, and they come along and they clean once a week, and it's become their almost a little raison d'etre for them for their summer, that they come along and they clean the sculpture and they look after it, and it's become theirs, and they really, really enjoy it, and they sort of almost take an ownership. And I think that's really important when you're looking at working with volunteers. Allow them the opportunity to take some ownership, so that it's not something that they come in and they do, and then they come in another week and it's something completely different, and it's completely different again. But actually some sort of, they like a sustainability, I feel, that they want to be able to come back and do it. And a lot of them will soon tell you if they get bored of that, that's for sure. And I think you absolutely have to have that two-way conversation with them. Are they comfortable doing these things? Do they want to do them? Is it okay if they do this? You know, try something new, have a go. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty whilst you do it. I'm a real one for, if I can do it, then anybody can do it. So be there with them and do that hand holding. And I do often pair them up with some of my more senior volunteers who have probably done it for years and years and years. And again, they do develop some really, really wonderful relationships. And always ask them for their feedback. And I do also always give them certificates. So no matter what they do, everybody loves a certificate. It doesn't really, you know, it doesn't cost a lot. It doesn't take a lot of time, but a certificate to say thank you, particularly if they're school groups, and then send them in so that they can get given them in their sort of assembly style places. And the same with Duke of Edinburgh as well. If they've done really well, then, you know, allow them that opportunity to have that praise and that feedback. I think it's really, really important for people to understand that. And I've had lots of volunteers who have done Duke of Edinburgh, who have done other things for me, who are still volunteering years and years later. They do like to come back to the same things. You know, they've helped on the duck race, and so they come back and they help on the duck race. But not only do they come back, but they bring their parents and they bring another friend, and you build up a really lovely relationship with them. And I confess that we are not, we're not the best organisation for keeping in touch with our volunteers. We do tend to talk to them when we need them. If only we had the staff and the ability to be able to talk to them all of the time, but we don't have that. But I think that sometimes that's okay. I think if people understand and you're not setting the bar too high and you're not exceeding, you're not sort of suggesting to them, yes, of course, we'll talk to you once a month and we'll do this and we'll do that. But actually really be honest with them and say, yes, we do tend to just contact you when we want you for events, if that's okay. And normally that is okay because, I don't know about you, but my inbox is full of newsletters that I don't read. So yes, so that's our experience, but we do have a lot of volunteers that really we could not do what we do without them. And certainly, when it comes to Duke of Edinburgh, if there's anybody out of that, then we do get them to have a work permit, and we do have to apply for the work permit. So obviously, with the local authority. So of course you have to wait a couple of weeks before we can have them in. But yes, if they're coming in groups from schools, we don't tend to go down the work permit rule because it's agreed through the school and it's all been agreed through them. And so they're also chaperoned as they come over. But I think that's probably about me.
Thanks, Sarah. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things. You mentioned you had a case study in the family, and it made me think that I've got a case study in my family too, and that's my daughter a couple of years ago when she was 14 did volunteering with Norfolk Libraries on the reading challenge, and I just wanted to give that a bit of a plug because I know Jared, the Norfolk Libraries volunteer coordinator, is looking for young volunteers at the moment, and that's at libraries across Norfolk. The other thing I wanted to mention after listening to Sarah's presentation is that our new volunteering platform, Get Involved, which some of you might have seen the launch event last week, or the first information event, not quite launched yet. The new platform actually has a facility where you could specify that you will take young volunteers, and it also you can actually have a way of developing a pool of volunteers for events as well. So if you don't want volunteers that are coming every week, but you just want to have a pool that you can call upon, that's something that the new platform you'll be able to do. So it's on our YouTube channel, the introduction session. So if you want to know more about that, have a look. I can share the link. Should we go into questions now? And Amber's got a question about I'd like to recruit some young volunteers, support with youth forums, but ideally looking for young people with specific experience. I had a close family member in prison, not quite sure where to start. And I think our volunteer policy is 18 plus. What age does the DofE go up to? Georgie, do you want to pick that up? But I'm also wondering whether there's anyone else in the call that might have any responses as well.
So the DofE, they have until they're 25 to complete. So you definitely will have a pool of young, older volunteers, who fit into that 18 plus category. That's something I can always talk with individual schools and DofE managers to see if there are any young people who might have that lived experience who would be willing to contribute to that. I would also say that there might be some, under 18, and like what we're talking about today, if it's a case of maybe just asking a few questions to see if your organisation would take on younger volunteers. Say if we found one who does have, that close family member who's been in prison, but they're 17 or 16, for an example, then potentially looking at how that barrier could be removed. But from just, a case of putting you in touch with potential volunteers, we could look to ask our golds, who are generally in that sort of 18 plus category.
Amber, sorry, I can't see on the chat. Which organisation are you representing today?
I work for Ormiston Family, so I'm a service user involvement officer, but my role is really new. We've got a volunteering manager as well, but I'm going to try and work quite closely with her because I think there's can be quite a lot of links between what I do and what she does. But I would like to get a lot more young volunteers because I think it's really valuable.
Amber, I don't really know the answer to this, but are you linked, obviously all Ormiston, but do you do much with OAT? So with the Academy Trust for the schools, are you quite separate organisations?
We're quite separate.
Oh, okay. Because the only thing I was thinking about with volunteers is that they have a very big D&V strategy. So there is someone on their executive team who deals with D&V at all the schools, and obviously then you get the volunteers. So if there was any partnership there, you could try the Ormiston academies in the city.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to it. It's not really my area of expertise, to be honest. So I'll talk to a volunteering manager about it. But definitely think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a bit like I'm not sure like how much opportunity there's going to be for them. It's a bit more about having like a pool of people to help when we have, like, say if we have a youth forum, like in the half terms and some holidays. Because I think that's probably what it's going to be like, but I'm not 100% sure. So you need to have kind of a bit more of a solid offer for them, don't you, before?
Yeah, well, we do have, so with D&V, we have like a young spokesperson consent form that we send them, and we ask them that if we were to call on them, if we had any needs, would they be willing to be called upon? And they might not, you know, if things happen that are unannounced, like the Duke's passing, someone in the media might want to speak to a D&V participant in Norfolk, and we've got like a bank of people, but it sounds like it's a bit of a similar thing, because you might not need them, or something might come up and you think, so that's what works for us. I'm not sure what other organisations do.
Lisa, I noticed you've got your hand up. Did you want to say something?
I was just thinking actually that Amber, you should probably get in touch with some of our people here at Break, because actually we've got some young people who already participate in forums who would probably be ideal for yours.
Yeah, that's good, especially if you've got some young people who've had experience of being part of a forum, but they're a bit older now and they want to support the setting up of another forum. That would be amazing. Actually, it would be really helpful for us. Can you put your contact details in the chat? And then
yeah, or I'm happy to sort of introduce you by email if that's easy as well.
Yeah, whichever is best. Thank you, that's really helpful.
Is Lisa from Nelson's Journey? Did you have your hand up?
Yes, sorry, I think my internet connection was a bit unstable at the time. I was just going to say to Amber, the majority, not all, but the majority of our young volunteers at Nelson's Journey are young people who've used our service. I don't know, again, sort of how much support young people might receive from Ormiston families in terms of if they've had support as a young person while somebody in their life has been in prison. It might be that in a similar way to the young volunteers at Nelson's Journey, when they've completed their bereavement support with us, if they want, one way they can sort of give something back to the charity, if you like, or continue to have contact with the charity and help us to develop our services, is to become a young volunteer. But we only take young volunteers once their bereavement support has sort of come to an end, if that makes sense. So they're in a emotionally sort of resilient place to be able to volunteer. I don't know whether that would work in a similar way, or could work in a similar way for your organisation.
I think it could. I'm not 100% sure. I think at the moment it'd be good to have somebody who has experience of being part of a forum and maybe has the experience of having a parent in prison, but we haven't got the kind of communication methods set up at the moment to keep in contact with past service users, because I think going forward that would be a really good way of working, but I think to begin with I'm not quite sure how we'd do that. But I think it's a good idea.
I'm just going to move us on to the next question, because I can see that Angela's asked a question in the chat about the Green Care Network. And you've got 200 members across Norfolk who are part of the Green Care Network, and it occurs to Angela that some of them might have opportunities for D&V participants. How might we put in touch with these looking for volunteer opportunities? Georgie, did you want to pick that up? Because I think you've already started to make contact, haven't you, with Nigel at the Green Care Network?
Yes, so I've done a little recording for Nigel because I wasn't able to attend his session tomorrow about connecting young people with nature. And within that, I have advertised myself to support organisations with anything that they may need with regards to connecting them. You know, your 200 members would be fantastic for me, to be honest. So I would say, just if you know, at the end, if Amelia could share my contact details, just drop me an email. I'm happy to come and talk at any events that any of you might have, even if it's just about sort of raising the awareness and the profile of DofE and what we do. Like I said, we have thousands and thousands of young people every year looking for volunteering opportunities, and you know, 62% of them aren't finding them. So anything I can do to spread the word would be brilliant. So hopefully the session tomorrow with Nigel will help, but feel free to, you know, drop me an email for any other support that you might need.
Does that answer your question, Angela?
Yes, it really does. I know Nigel gets about, but I didn't know that he'd actually spoken to you
He's
already.
found his way to me. Yes, I'm involved in the Papillon project as well, so I know it's sort of come to me from both angles. So I'm very keen to promote both at the moment.
And I'd also like to write to you about Outpost as well, but I won't take the time now.
Yeah, no problem.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
No problem.
Oh. Has anybody else got any other questions? I'm going to take that as I'm going to stop the recording now.
Sorry, I was just going to say one more thing that I
Yeah.
wrote down while Sarah was talking, is about the Summer Reading Challenge in particular. That's a very good example of a challenge that lasts 6 weeks, where the minimum volunteering programme is 13 weeks. So very often organisations think they can't use DofE volunteers because the time limits don't work. What volunteers can do, including in their programmes for up to a quarter, is planning and preparation. So even though the actual activity that you may have only lasts 6 weeks, for example, they could themselves, through some support from you if you need to, create a prior research planning task, you know, learning about popular children's books or authors or tasks that they might want to do. So don't let that ever be a blocker or a barrier, because there are things that we can do with that young person in that planning stage to make the time fit.